Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, the day was lost, but I gained a worthy tech support companion. Terrified in a control booth. Bits and bytes. Never trust your client. Ever. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. The day was lost, but I gained a worthy tech support companion. Today, I was in need of some tech support. I work remotely with a basic multi-laptop network, set up to my laptop, which is acting as a local server for all our documents, through a switch. We have one printer and some basic specialized gear that needs to connect to its specialized software via USB port. The problems requiring tech support were, 1. My specialized software was no longer talking to its specialized device via the USB connection, and 2. We got connected to a new internet connection, and my printer was no longer found on the network. I have dealt with my tech support company before, and due to my remote location and lack of phone reception, I emailed them to give permission to remote into my device whenever they were free. At around 10 a.m. a support agent who I've dealt with before appeared on my device. He knows the drill with the specialized program, as this is not the first time I've asked him to reinstall it. He knows the situation with the connection. I am hopeful for a good outcome. He begins reinstalling the program while chatting in the little chat window through his connection. We get talking about the device, the constant issues with it, etc. He completes the reinstall, and it still does not work. He digs, and we chat, and he reconfigures, and we chat. I send him photos of the setup. I plug this here, I plug that there, the whole process for a long time. Finally, we find a simple setting, and I mean simple setting, on the relative surface of this specialized program, which allows us to set the program to look for information coming through USB port COM3 specifically, and it is instantly fixed. Happy days. This has been a recurring issue for a long time. I was so excited, and in the chat, I said, "Get that man a pointy hat, he's a wizard." He laughed and said he will ask his boss for one. On to issue 2. The relatively simple issue, reconfiguring the printer to the new network. This is not my first time with these machines, and I instantly texted him the printer's wired LAN IP address saying, "I assume you'll need this." He was impressed and said, "Well, if I'm a wizard, you must be a sage, because you can see the future." From that moment on, our chat changed. He was the wizard, and he called me sage. We spoke about how pointy our hats were, about how we were leveling up, and how his tech wizardry was strong enough for these issues. The wizard fixed the printer configuration, one final restart, and he was going to be on his way to conjure up some wizardry for another needy traveler. As my Dell laptop turned back on from the restart, it did so with one of the 2 extra connected monitors not detected. Specifically, the one connected via the HDMI port and not the VGA port. The wizard returned thinking the day was one only to be taken back, as was I, at the dark sorcery that was upon us. No sage could have foreseen this sorcery. This sorcery which made no sense. Nothing we had done had anything to do with the monitors or their connections. We chatted and plugged things in and restarted things, and chatted and plugged other things in, and used some mana potions, and grinded for more skills, and chopped wood to level 99. We couldn't understand how my laptop had gained the ability to print and immediately lost the ability to HDMI port. The wizard reached deeper into his bag of holding and began updating the drivers. He updated Windows, he updated the Dell settings, he updated the Intel graphics card, he reached so deep he updated the BIOS. We could feel the mana flowing through us as he said, "Sage, this should work after we restart." I replied, "So we must be separated for this final battle, see you after the restart." I restarted the laptop for what seemed like an eternity. It did not fix the issue. We thought we were building up to the final battle, but we were being beaten by a mini-boss. The only one that can save us now is Gandalf the White, I said as I lost all hope. "Gandalf, and I go way back, but he's retired now," he replied, as we agreed that's probably why this level of sorcery was allowed to happen in the world. "I have one final idea, Sage," says the wizard as he consulted his boss. the Archmage, after over 5 hours on this treacherous adventure with me, when all seemed exhausted and lost. Let's uninstall that specialized program we fixed before. Defeated, I agree. But this sorcery was too strong for us. My laptop still does not want to HDMI. Just no HDMI capabilities present anymore, with no warning. We part ways at the close of business. We have used all our potions. We have attempted a raid on a boss we were not prepared for. We did not level up. We ran away, and the day was lost. This has been the funniest client chat ever, Sage. Keep me posted if you ever figure out what happened to the third screen, he said to me at the end, and we closed the chat. The day was lost. I lost a screen. I uninstalled a necessary program, but I gained a printer and a worthy companion, and we both know our journey is not over. Terrified in a control booth. The death threat story reminded me of this long story. Sorry, smiley face. I used to work on a very big steel site in South Yorkshire, UK. There are a few, but less than there was. I was senior tech support and was called on the shittier jobs that nobody wanted due to the high danger risk of the site. Add to that, I was our safety rep, responsible for keeping the team up to date with safety regs and the like. For dangers, read fire, heat, molten metal, high items that might fall, etc. Not fun at all. Within each site are large, hangar-sized, if not bigger, buildings, and within these are enclosed pulpits where the computer terminals were. They were flaky as they were, at the time, Windows NT 4 with a NetWare client over the top. Flaky as anything. This one pulpit was in a control room, back of a mill and fairly isolated, and that was where I was due to go. Got the real short straw. On with the wool suit, safety boots, ear defenders and hard hat on the hottest day of the year, and someone had taken out the pool car with aircon. Nice. On I trekked to the booth, dodging sparks and all sorts, acknowledging a few steel workers who I'd befriended on the way. Seemed normal and everything. I need to mention that, at the time, I was in my late 20s and well experienced with support. I'd been threatened, insulted and generally abused over the years, so I had a pretty thick skin. I'm also 5'8" and at the time, thin without much build. That has since changed. I walked to the pulpit, and there's a guy there I don't recognize at his non-working PC, compact Presario desktop if I remember rightly, and he stands up. He's a very large man. Huge. Tall and physically intimidating. I'm okay with this normally because he's just a user, and that's fine. But this time it felt different. He stood over me, watching me. They sometimes do so they can watch the keystrokes for the admin password, but this time too close for comfort, and his crotch was far too close to me for my liking. It was deliberate. I've worked this out in hindsight. I'm struggling now because something wasn't working right, and while I could log in, it seemed to be an old profile, and just not right. User was talking to me and being lewd, and my discomfort level was dialed up to 11 by this point. I decided to leave and come back with someone else later on to help. In reality, I just wanted out and stood up, made apologies and said that I'd be back later on and another PC and another pulpit would be just fine until then. As I'm putting my gear back on, he moved to stand, blocking the door. He was looking at me in a very uncomfortable way and said to me words that I have never forgotten. If we were in prison, you'd be my bitch, and took a step towards me. At this point, I was genuinely terrified as to what might happen next. Properly afraid. Thankfully, one of the steel workers who I knew came in at this point. Someone I knew well, who could see that something was wrong. He suggested that the guys let me pass and that I should leave now. I did. Quickly. And never went back. This was, actually, worse than the time when one of the steel directors threw his new laptop at me because it was SHT, and you're a useless F-king moron. My first visit to him too was the senior guy sent to fix his laptop. Sorry for the long story, but I'd forgotten that. And the terror I felt. Bits and bytes. I was working on a transcription project where data was being replicated from one city to the other, and because of the high change rate, it had to be done asynchronously. Raw data would come in at the primary site, get processed, and was returned to the end client for their use. My client didn't want to replicate the process data, just the raw, since it could be redone at any time and was considered more critical than the final product. The problem was they had to use uncompressed audio files in order for the software to be able to make the best transcription, which were freaking huge in comparison to the final document files. They wanted them kept in case a transcript was wrong to compare them against. This is probably going to give away what I was working on, but it's critical to the story. Data at Site A and was snapshot from a primary disk to a secondary, then sent over MABEL to Site B. Once at Site B, it landed on a mirror of the site a secondary disk until the packets were complete, then snapshot to a primary disk at Site B. It wasn't a single disk doing this, dozens were constantly being written to and copied over the wire to the other site all the time. This is a really simplistic way of describing it, but I'm avoiding using the exact verbiage so I don't give them away. Anyway, I was asked to come in and implement my product using a new procedure that hadn't yet gotten a formal support write-up yet. This was a one-off that later I found had been grudgingly given approval for, and if it worked, it would be worked up into something real. Everything was set up, and when it was turned on, we were shocked at how much data was being sent over the wire, and how far out of track it was. Data was being blasted down the wire, almost saturating it, although the client insisted the data change rate was correctly sized for the line. I ended up in a major northeastern city during a snowstorm, so I could be at the Site B data center to complete the switchover from catch-up to asynchronous mode. I couldn't physically get to the site because of the snow, so I hooked up my Motorola Razr to my laptop and dialed into the machine from my hotel room. I knew the data flow slacked off at 11:30 p.m. midnight, so I sat and watched as it slowly dropped lower and lower towards the 10,000 track threshold where I could switch to async. Wait, what? 11,000? 12,000? 13,000? The window started at about 11:35, and lasted a whole 10 minutes before climbing back up. Just for giggles, I tried issuing the command anyway, but it failed. So, I copied my logs and put them in an email to everyone concerned and asked, what now? Well, what now was the client flipping out and calling us incompetent, demanding to know why I couldn't make it happen. I'd been putting in 12-16 plus hour days on this, working overnight and weekends, traveling back and forth to Site B to get it done. My boss said, hang on, Joe's been putting in a lot of time on this, so let's get a second opinion, and a national SME was brought in to analyze everything and do a root cause analysis. He's also a good friend too, but I knew he would tell the absolute truth in this, no matter who was to blame. The RCA call started out with him going over everything, explaining that he'd analyzed the nominal data traffic, adding in the new traffic, and explaining how it all worked together. His part went something like this. After sampling the data flow at both ends, the system, with axes sending bidirectionally about 38.5 megabits per second, which works out to be a little over 4.8 megabytes per second, using all the capacity of the wire. The light bulb was coming on in my head at this. So what? The client PM exploded, we've got a 45 megabyte circuit. No, you don't. Yes, we do. No, you have a DS3 circuit, which is 45 megabits. That's 5.65 megabytes per second at maximum transfer rate. 0.8 megabytes isn't enough to allow the normal data traffic between sites without the new system. It's simply not big enough. I never heard the man utter another word, and I never heard from him again. I'd had enough and asked my boss to move me off the project, which he gladly did. Last I heard they'd upped the bandwidth between the sites, and it was working fine. The moral of the story is, do the math, know what a bit is, and know what a byte is. Never trust your client. Ever. I have been working for a near 3 years at a call center providing IT support, so I am still quite fairly new, but I learned quick. During the beginning we go over a lot of training over some of the software we use, major/minor troubleshooting, resolves, call taking, how to, etc. etc. During a week of training for remote user support, I was with someone who taught me a golden rule. Never trust your client/caller ever. This has always been on my mind to make sure I always understand the full story and asking correct questions before diving in. But sometimes I give in and trust the caller to shave a few minutes off a call, or sometimes simply because it makes sense to. Never again. Normal day, normal calls. One call comes in, it was transferred from one of my colleagues who was training someone. Lady tells me the following even before being introduced after being transferred. Lady, I cannot type at all and it's not working, my system is frozen and my monitor is not responding. Me to myself, here we go. What the hell is she even talking about? Me, hi ma'am, I'll be taking over this call moving forward. What exactly do you mean you cannot type? Lady, it's just not working, I type and it's not working, the previous guy told me to unplug my monitor and reboot test it, didn't work, plugged the monitor back in, and it's still just not working. Me to myself, what the hell kind of troubleshooting is that? What wasn't I told from the previous agent? Oh my god, this is going to be a long one. Me, can you click on the dash? Lady, no, I can't even click. First of all, she was using a laptop that was connected to their monitor. Normal stuff, they just couldn't do anything, we unplugged the monitor, and had them use the laptop as normal. I told them to just log into the system with the laptop keyboard and mouse. It worked. We got in, got them connected and I remote on to see what the hell they were doing with this monitor shenanigans. Immediately I get a key test running, they test out their external keyboard and no keys are registering. Device manager showed no external mouse or keyboard connected. Nothing in Windows settings devices either. We plugged the monitor back in to see what all of the monitor shenanigans was about because she was telling me how it had something to do with the monitor because of the last agent that was helping them. I find out they had their keyboard and mouse connected to the actual monitor running as kind of like a docking station. Magically, the keyboard and mouse show up Windows settings devices as a combo. One USB for both devices. Shenanigans if you ask me. Key test again, keyboard doesn't work. Mouse is working now? Had them unplug the USB from their monitor, which took a while cause they couldn't find it. And had them plug in directly to their laptop. Mouse worked, but not keyboard. What the hell? I decide, well, maybe it's something with the drivers. Or the keyboard is dead. Me, does the keyboard usually emit any light at all? Lady, no. Me, by chance does your keyboard run off of batteries? Lady, yeah it has batteries but changing them didn't fix it. Me, is everything in correctly? Lady, yes. Me, could we swap out the batteries again maybe? Maybe we got one with no juice in it left. Few minutes go by. Lady, it's still not working, only the mouse works. Okay, I guess I can't get much more information from that. I have to kind of trust them on this one. I won't even bother asking them for the model because they really sound like they wouldn't know. I was really over the day and wanted to get this call over with, fix it, move on. I start looking at drivers, uninstall, reboot, reinstall, same issue, took a further look to see if for whatever reason the keyboard had internal storage, maybe for whatever reason it was being blocked by our system policies. Whatever. We're pretty deep into this call given it takes a lot of time for them to reboot, test things, the occasional BRB, or hold on real quick, and even the no I don't know that makes our lives a bit harder. What could it even be? I was honestly just about to tell them that hey we're SOL here, let's get you a new keyboard. Lady was fiddling around for a while in the middle of looking at everything, and me being completely stumped and about to send them documents for a keyboard replacement. Lady, oh you know what, the nub of the battery is supposed to be on the spring right? The nub by the way, ha 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 ha. Me, no, definitely not, it's supposed to be the other way around. Facepalm. Keyboard now works like a charm. Sometimes we overlook the simple things because we put too much trust into our client. The golden rule, never trust your client ever.